Hello everyone, please press subscribe, press follow, press the bell so you don't miss any new clips. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Author by Flying Alone. Audio novels by Novelist. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 91. Entering the Academy. However, Lu Yutong was a true disciple. She was not as strong as Qi Yongyi, so why? Because she was the princess of the Lu clan. So, for one, the academy definitely had to give some face to the Lu clan, and for another, at the tournament at the end of the year, she'd still be able to obtain a valuable treasure from her clan to drastically increase her battle prowess for a short time, thus allowing her to easily keep her position as a true disciple. Of course, each great clan could open this kind of back door only once, and guarantee the entry of only one of their clansmen into the academy. All other clansmen could only depend on themselves to fight for their own place in this academy. Above true disciples, there were three core disciples. The core disciples were people the academy would put its full efforts into developing because they were the strongest among the younger generation of Rain Country. They represented the future level of martial arts of the whole of Rain Country, and were the face of the entire nation. To become a core disciple, the prowess of Gushing Spring Tier was necessary. A few hundred years ago, one of the strongest ever core disciples had even reached Spiritual Ocean Tier. However, upon reaching 30 years old, everyone would have to leave the academy, because 30 years old was considered as the age of maturity, and anyone above this age would be considered a full adult. One of the current core disciples was Xuanhuan, the third imperial prince of Rain Country. He was not only extremely talented, he was also someone that the imperial family of Rain Country as well as Huyang Academy had concentrated their efforts on developing, so naturally, he was extremely powerful. He was currently 27 years old, yet had already reached the 7th layer of Gushing Spring Tier. He was the strongest disciple of Huyang Academy, and was also nicknamed as the strongest son of heaven of Rain Country. The second person was Xuanhuan, who was a member of the Zhao clan, one of the 8 great clans. According to the rumors, when he was born, a strange phenomenon was witnessed. A golden light lit up half the imperial city, and he was almost killed by the secret powers of the imperial family, because he was considered a potential threat to the imperial throne that belonged to the Qi clan. Thankfully, the emperor was a wise man, and he not only did not do anything to harm Xuanhuan, he had even bestowed Xuanhuan with the title of Marquess of the Golden Sky, to be granted nobility status upon birth. That was the first time this kind of event happened in the history of Rain Country. And Xuanhuan, after awakening his spirit base, indeed displayed a terrifying talent in the field of martial arts. Currently, Xuanhuan was 23 years old, and he was in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring Tier, so in truth, he was not inferior in any way to Xuanhuan. The third person was called Can Yi. He did not have a surname, and according to rumors, he was an orphan. He had been picked up the headmaster of the Huyang Academy from the street, and since he was a child, he had been missing his right arm. In the field of martial arts, losing the right arm was practically a sentence of death, and there would no longer be any future for this kind of person. Yet Can Yi still managed to become a core disciple, proving how terrifying his natural talent was. Can Yi, 22 years old, 3rd layer of Gushing Spring Tier. He was also rumored to have battle prowess that could soar up to 7 stars, and was someone that even Xuanhuan would have misgivings about going up against. Interesting. While Ling Han was waiting for the teacher who was responsible for receiving the new students, he kept thinking thus. He did not think too deeply about Xuanhuan and Xuanhuan, but this Can Yi did engender some of his intrigue. Could this Can Yi also be a genius who possessed a heaven-grade spirit base? Otherwise, how could his advance up the ranks be so swift and he himself so powerful? Hey, are you a new student? The teacher in charge of enrollment finally walked over. He looked at Ling Han a bit oddly, because he had never seen anyone coming to report carrying a little girl. That's right. Ling Han drew out the proof showing that he had exited from Dayuan City and handed it over to the teacher. The teacher in charge of enrollment was an elite in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring Tier, and definitely not someone to be underestimated. The teacher received it from him, took a look, and could not help showing a surprised expression. He blurted out, "You're Ling Han." Ling Han scratched his head, and asked, "Am I very well known?" "Ha ha ha ha, you, with the mere prowess of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, managed to defeat an opponent of the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and that opponent happened to be Qi Yongyu, whose battle prowess is not in any way weak. Such talent. TSK, TSK. The headmaster has already said to immediately bring you to see him when you're here to report," the teacher said. Suddenly, he stared blankly and gasped in astonishment, You've already broken through to the 5th layer of element gathering tier." He was at first shocked, but then thought that Ling Han must have long since reached the peak period of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, and after so many days, this guy thus smoothly soared to the 5th layer of element gathering tier. When he thought about it this way, the shock level lessened by quite a large degree. If he found out that Ling Han had only been in the 2nd layer of body refining tier only a few months ago, his jaw would probably drop out of shock. However, because of his exclamation, Hu Niu was instantly awakened. She was extremely displeased, and bared her teeth and growled at the teacher, displaying her ferocious nature. "Come, I'll take you to see the headmaster," the teacher beckoned his hand, waving Ling Han forward. Though Ling Han was still very weak now, with time, he may become the strongest core disciple of the academy and show off the might of Rain Country. Ling Han nodded and followed the teacher out, stepping onto a pathway in the academy. Very quickly, they arrived at a cluster of buildings. This was where the high-level officials resided. However, that headmaster had not stayed in his own courtyard, so the teacher in charge of enrollment instructed him to wait for a moment while he himself would go to seek out that headmaster who had gone who knows where. Ling Han waited for a moment, but felt a bit bored, and so began to stroll around in the surrounding area. He suddenly picked up a very familiar smell, and he could not stop his feet from moving towards the source of that smell. It was a very elegant courtyard. The door of the courtyard was ajar, and had not been closed. Ling Han pushed open the door and entered, and very soon saw a young girl sitting cross-legged in the courtyard. Her hand was holding onto a very small alchemy furnace, and her whole right hand was erupting in flames. She was concocting a storm pill. Storm pill allowed a martial artist to increase his speed temporarily, like a storm blowing through. It was a very useful alchemical pill. However, there was something wrong with this smell. Ling Han wrinkled his nose and took a sniff. He instantly understood. One of the complementary drugs was wrong, and though this still allowed the storm pill to be successfully concocted, it would affect the success rate of forming the pill. It would also increase the chances of the furnace exploding. He spoke up, "I advise you to stop immediately. Otherwise, within the time of 3 breaths, your alchemy furnace would definitely explode." The girl completely ignored him. Now was the crucial time of concocting the storm pill, so how could she afford to be distracted? Merely by the 2nd breath, the lid of the furnace was violently flung off, and some bits of junk sprayed out from within the furnace. Although she managed to dodge the majority of it, her face was still covered by a bit of it. The furnace had exploded. The girl finally raised her head to look at Ling Han, surprise filling her eyes. How had this guy known that the furnace would explode? You have to understand, with her level of control, there was absolutely no way that she would have been distracted by any external factors. The scarlet wolf bone is one of the most likely ingredients that would cause a furnace to explode. Especially if it is used in the concoction of storm pill, it would affect the quality of the completed pill. I really don't know what kind of idiot came up with this. Ling Han said, shaking his head. How dare you insult my master? The girl was suddenly enraged. With a flash, she had already leaped towards Ling Han. Her right hand formed a palm strike, flames winding around her hand as the heat caused the air around her hand to ripple. 7th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han had known her cultivation level with a single look, and from the looks of this palm strike, she had not even reached the battle prowess of 7 stars. Actually, this was quite normal. Alchemists would concentrate all their energy on pill concoction and alchemy, so where would they have gotten any spare time to spend on refining their martial arts? This girl's cultivation level of 7th layer of element gathering tier had probably been reached with the aid of alchemical pills, so it was only logical that her actual battle prowess was quite weak. When she stood up, Ling Han had only at this moment realized to his surprise that this girl possessed a very tall, slender figure, and was about the same height as himself. Moreover, she had the charm of a deity, and was overwhelmingly beautiful, not the slightest bit inferior to Lu Yutong in terms of looks. Have I spoken wrongly? Ling Han said as he dodged. Meanwhile, Huniu was crouching nearby, her face filled with excitement, wanting nothing more to pounce in and take a few bites of her own. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 92. The Real Storm Pill. The young girl gave a humph. She continued attacking, but said, the pill formula for this storm pill was a damaged, incomplete one. My master spent a considerable number of years and finally managed to complete the formula. Such a feat was an incredible contribution to the field of alchemy, and you dare to insult my master, so don't you think you deserve a beating? The storm pill too was lost in the passage of time. Ling Han could not help frowning. What was going on here? Why had so many pill formulae from his time been lost? Reverse pill, storm pill, dark moon grass actually being used to concoct purple origin pill, which was a spine-chillingly wasteful use of the dark moon grass. Logically, after 10,000 years, even if knowledge of alchemy had not improved much, it shouldn't have degraded to such a level, right? He struck fiercely with a palm, forcing the girl away from him. He said with a smile, if that's true, then your master is indeed quite skilled. However, if I manage to concoct a better quality storm pill, then what are you going to do? Impossible. How can you surpass my master? The girl did not believe him at all. Just let me give it a try. Worst comes to worst, we'll continue our fight later. Ling Han said. Fine. The girl agreed. Ling Han grabbed the alchemy furnace that had been dropped on the ground, and said, prepare the ingredients for me. He opened his mouth and in one breath recited a list of more than 20 different medicinal ingredients. If it was someone else, they would definitely not be able to remember all the ingredients. But since this young girl was an alchemist, she must definitely have a very powerful memory in this area. Very soon, she went into the room and returned with the ingredients Ling Han needed. Ling Han sat down on the ground. His right hand held onto the alchemy furnace. Hong, and flames instantly appeared upon his hand. The girl's beautiful face revealed a sliver of displeasure. After all, when an alchemist was in the midst of concocting alchemical pills, they all kept up a solemn demeanor, and would usually seat themselves cross-legged on the ground. This was a kind of formality. Yet Ling Han had just simply sat on the ground in such a relaxed fashion. This was absolutely inappropriate. But once she saw that Ling Han had begun the process of pill concoction, she could only force back the admonishment that had come to her mouth. To disturb another whilst he was in the midst of pill concoction was one of the greatest taboos for alchemists, so naturally she would not deliberately violate this rule. She was very much disdainful. One had to understand that although her master did not belong to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, his level of achievement in alchemy was absolutely authentic. He was a black-grade high-level alchemist, and that was the same grade as the highest-ranked official of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion in Rain Country. Her master was currently the headmaster of the alchemy department in Huyang Academy. When there was mention of the name Wu Songlin, what person would not respectfully address him as Grandmaster? Even the imperial family of Rain Country had to give her master a modicum of respect. This brat actually dared to call her master an idiot. If this news was spread out, he'd definitely be beaten to death within 3 steps out of this courtyard. Once Ling Han began the process of pill concoction, his demeanor immediately changed. There was an air similar to the air of a great master circulating around him. His left hand moved very quickly, throwing medicinal ingredients into the furnace one after another. In the meantime, the furnace rotated continuously on his right hand. The flames were sometimes red, sometimes green, and sometimes white, transforming from one to the other color at a very rapid rate, seeming like a blur to any observer. The girl's disdainful expression had rapidly disappeared, and a shocked expression revealed itself on her face instead. Amateurs would only enjoy the show, while experts would enjoy the artfulness. Her name was Li Si-chan, and she herself was a genius of alchemy, which was why she had been taken as a disciple by Wu Songlin. She was a very conceited person, but when she compared herself to Ling Han, she had to admit that Ling Han's movements were much more experienced and mature than her own. His movements were very natural and relaxed, as if he had been immersed in this field for a few hundred years and had reached the level where he could easily concoct pills even with his eyes closed. Such an achievement, let alone her, even her master was far inferior. How could this be? How could this be? Shouldn't this guy be a profligate young master? How was it that he had such frightening ability in the field of alchemy? Within mere moments, the medicinal ingredients in front of Ling Han had all disappeared, and some sweat had appeared on his forehead. Storm pill was a yellow-grade mid-level alchemical pill, after all. Furthermore, it was one of the more difficult to concoct types. He was able to concoct it now, but because his cultivation level was a bit too weak, it exerted much of his energy to do so. Yi, my good disciple, have you finally concocted the storm pill? At this moment, a voice filled with surprise was heard from the doorway. A small, short old man walked in, all smiles and with a food container held in his hands. There was another old man behind him. The two of them walked in together, and if one paid careful attention, they would be able to discover that there were 3 silver badges hanging on the chests of these two men. Black-grade high-level alchemists. In the whole of Rain Country, there were only 2 black-grade high-level alchemists. One of them was the Pavilion Master of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, Fu Yuan Sheng, whereas the other was the headmaster of the alchemy department of Huyang Academy, Wu Songlin. And they were these 2 men. Wu Songling saw the girl was standing at one side, and his face was instantly filled with surprise. He had never thought that the person who was in the middle of concocting the pill was not his disciple. Yi. Fu Yuan Sheng also revealed a shocked expression. He knew that Wu Songlin had obtained a very good disciple who had managed to become a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist at the mere age of 18. Moreover, the storm pill was one of the more difficult to concoct pills among yellow-grade mid-level alchemical pills, and now it was actually being concocted by another youngster. Naturally, this was enough to surprise him. It can't be that this old man Wu has gotten another genius of alchemy as a disciple, right? Damn it, why were all the talented people snatched away by him? Hu Niu had initially been extremely bored. She had lain down on the ground and had been sleeping, but after Wu Songlin entered, her nose immediately wrinkled, and she bounced up into a crouch. Her eyes fixed upon the food container in his hands, and suddenly, with a low growl, she scuttled forward and pounced towards the food container. Ling Han's right hand rotated continuously. There actually appeared 3 different kinds of flames from between his 5 fingers at the same time, red, green, and white, which suddenly extinguished. 3 Fire Guide. He had invented this in his last life, and this discovery brought upon a revolution in the field of alchemy. It not only would increase the quality of the completed pill, it could even recover a dead pill that could cause the alchemy furnace to explode. Wu Songlin and Fu Yuan Sheng were both flabbergasted. Their eyes were so wide that they were in danger of popping out of their skulls, and their mouths were wide open in shock. From the looks of it, they were extremely astonished and shocked. Meanwhile, Hu Niu took advantage of their distraction and snatched Wu Songlin's food container away. She immediately opened it up, and began to enjoy the delicious contents. Could this be the legendary long-lost 3 Fire Guide? To be able to produce 3 different flames at different temperatures, which would improve the effects of the completed pill drastically. It can even recover dead pills. This is the legend of legends, and I've always thought this was only a myth. It should not be the real one, probably just an imitation. The 2 old men said, filled with astonishment. Ling Han exhaled. He tossed the alchemy furnace to Li Si-chan, and said, fortunately, I've not disappointed your expectations. Take a look. Sure. The 2 old men simultaneously snatched at the furnace, as if they were 2 kids fighting over a toy. They were both powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier, so their actions were as fast as lightning, and only appeared to be a blur to observers. Li Si-chan was dumbstruck. These two were the most respected and revered alchemists in the whole of Rain country, and now they were actually behaving like two kids. How could she believe what her own eyes were telling her? Finally, the two old men desisted at the same time. One of them held onto the furnace, while the other lifted the furnace lid and very carefully drew out a scarlet pill from within. This color, this aroma. There's no mistake, this is the real storm pill. Wu Songlin carved off a small slice, placed it into his mouth, and tasted it. He could not help the increasing degree of surprise and shock on his face, and said, "This is definitely the real storm pill, and moreover, its effects have reached 12 stars, no, 13 stars. What?" Fu Yuansheng instantly leaped up in shock. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 93. Convinced. In the field of alchemy, if the quality of a completed pill reached the standard requirements, it would be graded as 10 stars. If the quality exceeded normal standards, it would be graded as 11 or 12 stars. Normally, the quality would not exceed 12 stars. If the quality of the completed pill was below normal standards, it would be given a grade from 1 to 9 stars, and any pill with less than 1 star would be considered as junk, absolutely unusable. Hiss. Even if I were concocting low-grade alchemical pills, my best record was only 12 stars. Fu Yuansheng exclaimed in shock. Li Si-chan's face was filled with absolute disbelief. She could already be considered a genius of alchemy herself, or she would not have been taken in by Wu Songlin as his personally taught disciple. Yet the majority of the completed pills that she has managed to concoct would be 10 stars, barely acceptable. A small portion of her completed pills would be 9 stars or 11 stars. Moreover, the storm pill could be considered to be one of the hardest to concoct pills among yellow-grade mid-level pills. Just take her as an example, she had already practiced concocting the storm pill for a month, yet every time, her efforts would only result in the furnace exploding. You can see how high the difficulty level of concocting this pill was. Such a pill, as long as it was completed, it would be considered a success. Even if it was only graded 3 or 4 stars, this kind of pill would still have a large market of customers willing to buy it. 13 stars, that was the kind of pill over which people would go to war. This guy really had not been bragging. He had really concocted the storm pill, and the quality of the completed pill was even higher than Wu Songlin's own. The storm pills that Wu Songlin himself concocted were only graded at 8 stars, or his record best, 9 stars. Could it be that her master had really made a mistake? Young man, Wu Songlin's eyes were bright and shining. This expression had a close degree of similarity with Hu Niu. In an instant, he had scuttled over to Ling Han, held onto his hand and said, "Were you using the 3-fire guide earlier?" Ling Han nodded. Wu Songlin and Fu Yuansheng both sucked in a breath of cold air. This was something that had been considered a myth among myths. What did a young man that knew how to use the 3-fire guide signify? Young man, accept me as your master, and I can guarantee you will become an earth-grade alchemist at the very least. Wu Songlin said immediately. Hearing these words from him, Fu Yuansheng instantly understood that Ling Han had no relations to Wu Songlin. He quickly squeezed himself into the fray and said, "No, take me as your master. I am the pavilion master of Rain Country's Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, and I've got uncountable resources in my hands. You can concoct any pill you like." Nonsense. Old man Fu, you have to understand, this is the territory of my Huyang Academy. Are you trying to snatch my disciples away from me? Wu Songlin was instantly enraged. This young man was obviously a genius of alchemy that could never be encountered within 1,000 years. Just take a look at that storm pill, and you'll know, that's 13 stars. This was practically without precedent. What do you mean by snatching your disciples away from you? You don't even know the name of this young man, and you dare to say he's your disciple. Fu Yuansheng snorted. He turned back round, all smiles again. Young man, what's your name? Li Chan was completely struck dumb with shock. These two men were the best alchemists in the whole of Rain country. Whichever one of them announced they intended to accept disciples, it was absolutely guaranteed that there would be a queue of people all the way from the east gate to the west gate of the imperial city. But now, these two men were actually fighting with each other over who gets to accept Ling Han as a disciple, and were even about to come to blows over the matter. How could this not astonish her? Moreover, she was even a little jealous. "I am Ling Han said. "I am one of the new students that is entering Huyang Academy this year. Did you hear that? This is a disciple of my department." Wu Songlin said proudly, and waved his hand a few times at Fu Yuansheng. "I don't have the time to share a drink with you today, so you'd best hurry back to your Heaven's Medicine Pavilion." "So what if he's a student of your Huyang Academy? That doesn't conflict with him accepting me as his master." Fu Yuansheng was completely indifferent, and continued to say to Ling Han, "Young man, what do you say? This is my disciple, old man Fu, are you going to fight with me over him?" Wu Songlin said in a thunderous rage. "For such a disciple, I'm definitely willing to fight." Fu Yuansheng said, not to be outdone. "You're going to ignore our friendship of so many years. Pei, you're the one who's so insistent on fighting with me." Neither of the two old men was intending to back down, and from the looks of it, they were moments away from fighting with each other. Master, the both of you can accept him as your joint disciple." Li Chan interrupted. "That's right." The two old men paused at the same time. Why hadn't they thought of such a simple solution? The two of them turned to look at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I think that the both of you might not be able to teach me anything." This, what arrogance! Li Chan's small mouth was wide open in shock. Who were Wu Songlin and Fu Yuansheng? They were the two strongest alchemists in Rain country. And they couldn't teach him anything. Even though you've managed to concoct a storm pill worth 13 stars, the storm pill is only a yellow-grade mid-level pill after all. Wu Songlin and Fu Yuansheng both looked displeased. This young man was a genius, but he was really too arrogant. Such a person may possibly shine for a moment, but definitely would not achieve too much. Ling Han smiled, and said, "The two of you, we can discuss our theories with each other, and learn from one another." Saying such words was really him being extremely modest and humble. As someone who had once been the Alchemy Emperor, putting aside that these two men were only black-grade high-level alchemists, even earth-grade high-level alchemists were only qualified to stand quietly and listen respectfully to his words in front of him. Yet Wu Songlin and Fu Yuansheng did not know that, so the displeasure on their faces deepened even further. Ling Han pretended he had not seen anything, and casually began to speak. Most of what he said was only common knowledge of alchemy. Though his cultivation level had decreased by much, and there was no way he was able to concoct high-grade alchemical pills, but if you were talking about theoretical knowledge, who would be able to match him? The two alchemists had been initially indifferent, but then they gradually became serious. Occasionally, they would offer their own opinions, but as the discussion continued, they had transformed into the learning side, and continued to ask Ling Han about some difficult problems they had encountered in alchemy. Li Chan watched all this happen from the side. She had long been shocked to numbness. This young man was obviously even younger than herself, yet how was it that he had such shocking understanding and comprehension in the field of alchemy? If one did not see his appearance and did not hear his voice, anyone would think that this was an elderly alchemist. She too possessed a terrifying talent in the field of alchemy, which was why she had been accepted by Wu Songlin as his personal disciple. Moreover, she was also extremely beautiful, and together with Lu Yutong, the both of them were called the twin pearls of the imperial city. The number of people who were interested in pursuing and wooing her would be enough to form a queue that could encircle the imperial city. But when you compared the two of them, she was practically like an alchemist's apprentice that had not even yet been formally taught. As she listened, the admiration she felt for Ling Han grew even stronger. She could not help sighing. There were indeed geniuses in this world. If that was not true, how was it possible that someone at such a young age had already surpassed her master? Indeed, there is no age restriction for learning. Whoever has the ability deserves to be called a teacher. Fu Yuansheng was the first to exhale. I had initially thought that young friend was too arrogant and proud, yet never thought that the one who was too arrogant and proud was myself. Young friend's level of comprehension in alchemy has already far surpassed the both of us, and in future, you definitely be able to become an earth-grade alchemist, or even a heaven-grade alchemist. After I've heard these words from you, I feel as if the grand door to earth-grade alchemy has opened for me, and once I manage to fully comprehend your views, I'd definitely be able to advance into the ranks of earth-grade. Wu Songlin sighed as well. He stood, bowed for a long while to Ling Han, and said, "Many thanks, young friend." "Many thanks, young friend." Fu Yuansheng had also stood, and bowed towards Ling Han. Li Sichan was completely numb with shock. Because of the unique status accorded to alchemists, these two men could be considered as possessing the highest status, and were only below the emperor in rank. Yet now, they actually both bowed to a youngster. This was a special treatment that not even the Emperor of Rain Country could enjoy. If this news spread out, probably no one would believe it, right? Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 94. Fighting to take in. Ling Han accepted their bows of respect without an ounce of guilt. Previously, he had indeed been teaching these two men. With these teachings from him, it was very likely that these two men had gained a chance to advance to each become an earth-grade alchemist. Otherwise, they couldn't even dream of achieving such heights within this lifetime. He could be considered as half the master of these two men. As a result, it was only right for him to receive a bow of respect from these two men. If young Master Han has any problems in future, please do come to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to seek me out, Fu Yuansheng said solemnly. He did not dare to address Ling Han as young friend any longer. Wu Songlin did not say anything along these lines. After all, Ling Han was a disciple of Huyang Academy, so he could see Ling Han at any time that he liked. He would of course not allow Ling Han to suffer any grievances in his territory. Ling Han smiled softly. He was not the type of person to selflessly offer gifts. The reason why he had taught these two men was because of their high status, and thus, he would have gained two powerful supporters in the imperial city, so he would have fewer qualms when doing certain things in this city. Fu Yuansheng excused himself and departed. A lot of the difficult problems in the field of alchemy that had been troubling him had been solved, so he needed to immediately return to digest this new knowledge and completely transform it into his own understanding and comprehension. Old man Wu, return my disciple quickly. It was at this very moment that an old man barged in, while the teacher in charge of enrollment followed behind. Needless to say, this was one of the headmasters of Huyang Academy, Liang Guangzhu. What, your disciple? Wu Songlin immediately glared at this intruder. This is obviously a disciple of our alchemy department. When did he become a disciple of your martial arts department? Huyang Academy was actually divided into two departments, the martial arts department and alchemy department. However, because there were indeed too few alchemists, when people talked about the Huyang Academy, they were actually referring to the martial arts department. In Wu Songlin's opinion, Ling Han's level of comprehension and understanding of alchemy was at quite scary heights, and his theoretical knowledge of the field was even deeper than his own. Then, naturally, he should be enrolled into the alchemy department, and concentrate his efforts on concocting alchemical pills, advancing step by step to the top of the field. Nonsense. This brat's battle prowess is outstanding, so of course he belongs to our martial department, and you actually plan to have him learn how to concoct alchemical pills. This is practically leading him astray. Liang Guangzhu was furious. He took great strides and was soon in front of Wu Songlin, pointing a finger at the latter while being so close that his finger was almost at the tip of Wu Songlin's nose. You're the one talking nonsense. This brat's understanding of alchemy is so high that there has practically been no precedent. To have him practice martial arts is the greatest waste of talent. Wu Songlin, not to be outdone, also pointed a finger at Lian Guangzu's face. Old man Wu, I'm warning you, don't point your finger at my face. Lian Guangzu threatened. You were the one who pointed your finger at me first. Wu Songlin humphed, withdraw your finger first. Pei, you take it back first. You first. If you added the age of each of these two old men, it would exceed 150 years old. These two old men completely looked like two stubborn bulls, glaring so intensely at each other that their eyeballs seemed to be in danger of popping out from their eye sockets. Li Xichan could not stop herself from pressing a hand to her forehead. Lian Guangzu and Wu Songlin had actually been friends for many years, yet these two old men had always been way too prone to arguing with each other. They'd be shouting and pointing their fingers at each other for each small issue, as if they were two mortal enemies. As for the teacher in charge of enrollment, he was completely dumbstruck by this scene. He knew that Ling Han was exceptionally talented, with outstanding battle prowess for someone his age. But to actually cause these two headmasters to almost come to blows just to have him enroll in their own department, this was something that he had never imagined would happen. Hiss. Wouldn't this brat be able to do as he liked in Huyang Academy in the future? No, no, no. With these two headmasters watching over him, he'd even be able to do as he liked in the whole imperial city. You have to understand, these two men were not only powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier, they were also the headmasters of the academy, and have taught uncountable numbers of elites, so their status was incomparably revered. Moreover, Wu Songlin also had the additional status of a black-grade high-level alchemist, so even the Emperor of Rain Country had to address him respectfully as Grandmaster when they met. The teacher in charge of enrollment could not help becoming so envious that his eyes had turned red. Fine. I will not lower myself to your level, but this brat is a disciple of my martial arts department, so I'm going to take him back. Lian Guangzu grabbed hold of Ling Han's shoulder. Nonsense. This is the future star of my alchemy department, and he is going to be the hope of the entire field of alchemy. How could I allow you to waste his talent like that? Wu Songlin quickly held onto Ling Han's other shoulder. Let go. You let go. The two old men each tugged at one shoulder, both intending to pull Ling Han to their side. However, they did not dare to put too much strength into it so as to avoid directly tearing Ling Han into halves. They could only glare furiously at each other and gasp continuously in exertion. These two men were extraordinarily outstanding individuals that could cause the entire Rain Country to tremble with a few stomps of their feet, and now they were actually about to come to blows as they fought over a young man. Who would believe that such a thing could be possible? Li Xichan was flushing in embarrassment. These two old men really did not act their own age. They were so old already, and yet they still liked to bicker with each other like two little kids. Meanwhile, Huniu gave a loud burp. She had really enjoyed her meal. Young Master Han, just say the word. Are you going to learn martial arts from this old man, or enter our alchemy department, and join us in researching alchemy? Wu Songlin asked. He did not want to have this genius of alchemy take a misstep in life. Don't be afraid of this old man, just tell him the truth. Don't you want to learn martial arts? Lian Guangzu hurriedly said. Due to his agitated state, he had not noticed that Wu Songlin had used the respectful address of young Master Han. Young Master Han, if you agree to enroll in the alchemy department, I will immediately give you 1,000 academic points. Wu Songlin gave him a very sincere offer in exchange for his agreement. What? Li Xichan and the teacher in charge of enrollment were both dumbstruck with shock. 1,000 academic points. Within the Huyang Academy, academic points could be exchanged for a multitude of various items, cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, alchemical pills, as well as various natural treasures. But it was very difficult to obtain academic points. Even a genius like Lu Yutong may not have accumulated 1,000 points altogether throughout the years she spent in the academy. Hey, old man Wu, you can't just simply give out academic points any which way you like. Rewarding with academic points is very strictly regulated, and you're not exempted from the rules. Lian Guangzhu hurriedly spoke. Hey, do you think I'm that kind of man? Wu Songlin said proudly, young Master Han has just completed the recovery of the storm pill. Does such a beneficial contribution not deserve a mere 1,000 academic points? What? Lian Guangzhu gasped quickly, hadn't you recovered the storm pill a long time ago? The pill formula I recovered could only produce a pill of 8 stars, yet the pill that this young friend had just concocted managed to reach 13 stars. Wu Songlin said extremely proudly, as if he was the one who had accomplished such a magnificent feat. Lian Guangzhu could not help but begin to feel as if he should concede, but then he immediately recalled Ling Han's extraordinary talent in martial arts, reaching the fifth layer of element gathering tier at the young age of 17. Moreover, at the mere level of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, he managed to defeat Qi Yongyi. Such a talented genius of martial arts, what was he going to learn if not martial arts? But the problem was, Ling Han had not yet made any significant contribution in the name of the martial arts department, so he could not really afford to reward Ling Han with any academic points. The old man began to sweat uncontrollably due to his anxiety. At this moment, Ling Han finally spoke, I'll just learn from both departments. He was the Alchemy Emperor, so if he casually offered some long-lost ancient pill formulae, he'd be able to get a huge pile of academic points. He would of course not surrender such an easy and attractive opportunity. Moreover, he did not intend to resume his old path of alchemy, and would be concentrating the majority of his efforts on the path of martial arts. The two old men looked at him doubtfully. After all, whether it was the field of martial arts or the field of alchemy, both were wide-ranging and profound fields of knowledge. Even if one spent his whole lifetime, it was practically impossible for him to reach the top of the field, what more to simultaneously practice in both fields. I'm a genius, so there won't be any problems, Ling Han said confidently. Li Sichan had half opened her mouth in shock. She was astonished by the level of shamelessness Ling Han could go to. How could someone praise himself to such an extent? But then she recalled Ling Han's previous performance. Even two black-grade high-level alchemists ignored their pride to seek his teachings. There indeed does not seem to be much problems with regards to the field of alchemy. There really won't be any problems, the two old men asked in unison. Definitely no problem, Ling Han said with a smile. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 95. Looking for a teacher. All right then, the two old men nodded at the same time. They had been friends for many years after all. While they had previously argued quite vigorously, neither wanted to damage the harmony between them, so this was an appropriate solution to the problem. Here, this is the plaque for my alchemy department. Just hold on to this, and you'd be able to freely enter the alchemy department. Wu Songlin handed an iron plaque over to Ling Han. Old man Wu, this brat just arrived to the academy to report today, so I'm going to take him to the martial arts department to register first, then make arrangements for his accommodation, Lian Guangzhu said, tugging on Ling Han, and left quickly. Lian Guangzhu dragged Ling Han off for a very considerable distance before finally stopping. When he asked the teacher in charge of enrollment, why had you let this brat run off to old man Wu's? The teacher felt very wronged. How could he have known that Ling Han loved to run around so much? He had just barely been gone for a while, and when he returned, Ling Han had disappeared. Yet he dared not argue with the headmaster, and could only lower his head humbly and admit his fault. Thankfully, Lian Guangzhu only wanted to vent some of his displeasure, and was not really blaming him. Good brat. He had defeated Qi Yongyi at the mere level of 4th layer of element gathering tier. He should have about 12 battle stars, a whole 8 stars more than what he should have at his current cultivation level. Not even that brat, Can Yi, would be able to match this kind of talent. Lian Guangzhu murmured, his eyes bright. Such a genius of martial arts, how could he waste his time on concocting alchemical pills? If these words were heard by Wu Songlin, based on his understanding of Lian Guangzhu, he'd definitely be able to guess that the latter had come up with a wicked idea. You arrange for him to stay in a more remote location, also arrange for him to be taught by a teacher that has no disciples. You must not let old man Wu find him. He was indeed two-faced. The teacher in charge of enrollment could not help sweating, and nodded hesitatingly. This was the headmaster, so he definitely had to obey his words. But Wu Songlin was also the headmaster of the alchemy department, plus he was also a black-grade high-level alchemist. In Rain Country, his status was more or less right below the Emperor of Rain Country. If Wu Songlin really intended to rebuke him, would he able to withstand the consequences? Lian Guangzhu of course understood the possible consequences, and so he said, after you're done with this, take a vacation for half a year. You will still be paid your monthly salary during your vacation. The teacher in charge of enrollment heard this, and was instantly delighted. This not only allowed him to lie low until Wu Songlin calmed down, he could even be paid without working at all. This was naturally the best option for him. Which teacher would be the best? After Lian Guangzhu had left, the teacher in charge of enrollment thought furiously. Ah, I've got it. He smiled. Old Mo. Old Mo. Ling Han was carrying Hu Niu with one arm, while his other hand was holding onto a light bundle that only contained a few changes of clothing. The teacher in charge of enrollment said, Old Mo's real name is Mo Gao. He also used to be a genius of our martial arts department, but later on, it was as if he had been possessed. He actually proclaimed that he wanted to create the ultimate sword arts technique in this world. The result was that his cultivation level stagnated and he did not advance any further. If it was not for the fact that the headmaster sympathized with his talent and took him in as a teacher at the academy. AI. But in any case, the headmaster intends to teach you personally, so you do not have to concern yourself with Old Mo's cultivation level. Ling Han was led by the teacher to an extremely remote location. There were only a bare few courtyards here, and they were all in shambles. The wild grass by the side of the pathway had already reached the height of his waist, so it was likely that no one had lived here for a very long time. Peng, peng, peng. The teacher stepped forward to knock on the door. After quite some time, a voice finally came from within, and said, Who is it? Old Mo, it's me. The teacher said. From the looks of it, the two of them were quite familiar with each other. The door opened, and out walked a medium-sized man. He should have been less than 40 years old, but his whole face was covered with a beard and he looked extremely disheveled, as he had not trimmed it in any way. It simply grew as it liked. Thus, appearance-wise, he appeared like a man who was in his 60s or 70s. What is it? If there's nothing important, I have to go practice my sword techniques. The man said. He was obviously Mo Gao. I'm here to deliver a student to you. The teacher pointed at Ling Han, and said, His name is Ling Han. All right. I've delivered him successfully to you, so I'll take my leave. It was as if a fire had been lit under his behind. He immediately ran off, terrified that he would encounter Wu Songlin. In that case, he'd really be trapped between a rock and a hard place. Ling Han stared at Mo Gao, and Mo Gao also stared back at Ling Han. For a moment, neither of them opened their mouths to speak. After a while, Mo Gao finally nodded, and said, Since I'm a teacher here, I can't really decline an assignment given to me by the academy. In the future, you can just follow me to practice sword techniques. All right. Ling Han was indifferent. The few courtyards nearby are all empty. Just pick any which one to stay in. Mo Gao turned back round and returned to where he had come from. I'll just leave this door open, and you can come in whenever you like. But it is strictly forbidden to disturb me when I'm practicing my sword techniques. Ling Han shrugged, and together with Hu Niu, went off in search of an appropriate place of accommodation. The courtyards here were all in shambles, with dust coating every surface. He chose a slightly better courtyard, and began a cleaning campaign. The courtyard had to be habitable, right? Hu Niu too tried to give a hand, but naturally, she was more of a hindrance than of help. With a flop, bits of dust flew all around in the air and her small face was transformed into the face of a little florid cat, causing Ling Han to laugh loudly in spite of himself. After busying themselves for over half a day, they had at least managed to completely tidy up a single room. Ling Han did not go immediately to seek out Lu Yutong, and trusted that she would take good care of Ling Zixuan. "Anyone here?" a voice was heard from the doorway. Ling Han walked over to take a look, and there stood a young boy in his teens, who was pushing a small cart. There was a sack of rice, some meat, and vegetables on the cart. Meat, meat, meat. Hunyu's eyes had immediately lit up. She took a leap and pounced over, scaring the young boy so much that he had fallen onto his behind on the ground. He was here to deliver the food rations. It looked like Ling Han would be preparing his own meals in the future. Ling Han smiled, walked over and pulled the young boy up. He asked, "How many days is this food for?" 10 days, the young boy said. "After 10 days, I'll come back to deliver some more food." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "This is not enough, there's only enough here for a single day." One day, the young boy was shocked, and his eyes swept over Ling Han in doubt. No matter how it was, he really could not see how it was possible that Ling Han would have such a huge appetite. "Never mind, just deliver the food here. Money's no issue," Ling Han said, smiling. "The academy does not have any regulations on the daily amount of food, but are you guys sure you can finish eating so much?" The young boy was in disbelief. Ling Han did not bother to explain himself. In truth, the one with such a huge appetite was not himself, but who knew. The young boy unloaded the food from the cart, and pushing the cart, he departed. Who knew immediately started to jump around Ling Han, looking very impatient. "Don't rush. It's not even night yet," Ling Han said with a laugh. Who knew was instantly displeased and pouted, baring her teeth at Ling Han. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "I won't be cooking today. We'll go and walk around the city. We'll have to buy new blankets and other essentials, as well as prepare a few more changes of clothing. After we're done shopping, we can go eat. Meat, 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 meat." Hearing the word, eat, the little girl immediately began to jump around again, her earlier displeasure completely gone. Ling Han brought the little girl and went out. He had already applied for permission from Liang Guangzhu so that the girl could stay with him here. Otherwise, if she had to stay outside the academy grounds, Ling Han really had no idea who would be capable of caring for her. He held onto Hunyu's hand and walked to allow the girl to get used to walking with two legs, and not keep thinking about walking around on all fours. Come see, Zhu Wuju is challenging Nangongji." They hadn't even left the grounds of the academy before hearing this announcement from a student who appeared to be extremely excited. End of the chapter. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao will be read in 5 chapters for every Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. Please leave this sound novel and press subscribe, follow, and the bell so you don't miss any new clips as well. See you.